Good afternoon. I'm Carl Garth and welcome to the Champion Chat with Councillor Alison Champion. Good afternoon, Alison. How are you today?
Carl, I'm fantastic. Thank you. It is so nice to be warm again, even if it's very briefly.
Yes, it is a lovely day out there. Definitely does remind us of spring. So
yes, it does.
Anything that holds winter 5 degrees in Melbourne off, I'm all happy for.
Me too. Yeah. It's lovely.
So, Alison, we're in April. So, obviously, we have to do our ANZAC Day podcast and look at upcoming remembrances and events that are being held by the each RSL in the Banyule City area. Yeah. And also have a little bit of a chat about the significance of the day and where it resides in our national conscience.
Yeah, it's one of our significant days, isn't it? It's a fascinating one. We lost that so badly, and yet we revere this day. It is right up there. You know what? I'm going to say it. Someone might not like it, but I'm going to say it. It's right up there with Christmas Day. Different reason, but it's right up there.
I think that's a pretty fair comment. I don't, you can talk about other days, Easter Friday, Good Friday, Easter Monday. They have special significance, but for generally the more Christian-orientated people in the country. Same with Christmas Day. You look at ANZAC Day, and whilst there are people who probably have differing views on ANZAC Day, many Australians look at it as, well, it's about what we did as Australians and what we continue to do as Australians overseas.
Yes, and you make the point as Australians and obviously New Zealanders as well.
Exactly.
We were in it together.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So it's always been a day of something. And I remember when I was growing up, I grew up with, the lemon tree and the rosemary bush. And every ANZAC Day, I remember in primary school, Mum would cut a sprig of rosemary and pin it to my uniform collar. And, I remember one day I just said, what's that for? And she said, today is ANZAC Day. So you wear rosemary.
Yes, exactly.
Or a poppy, and we don't have a poppy, so we have rosemary. and I think we did something at school. We did in the 70s. We learnt a bit about ANZAC Day in the 70s, but it wasn't. I just don't remember it being as magnificent as now.
I also grew up in the 70s, and I think part of the difference is. There's been a lot more education. Yes, we had education at school of ANZAC and Gallipoli, but the education I think we've had since has been a more personalised education of people who were there or people who were then in World War II and other wars or peacekeeping missions. So they've actually been able to create a connection to more people, obviously through the media and everything else, which has humanised it rather than being an abstract event.
Agree totally. I totally agree. And, thinking about today's podcast and some of the questions and things we could talk about, I really, what comes up for me, being an immigrant. So I was born in Australia, but both my parents are immigrants. And, there may have been some knowledge of them of ANZAC Day. They've got knowledge of what happened in their countries, in, World War I, World War II. They've got their knowledge and their experience. So they bring their lives to this country, to Australia as immigrants. The proximity to ANZAC Day isn't as close as those Australian kids who are in our cohort whose parents and grandparents fought as Australians in that war. So that information, that knowledge can be passed down a lot more easily. There's a lot more connection and therefore a greater understanding, the medals, like there might have been medals in a household or some kind of souvenir, if you like, of that time of the previous generation having fought in the war or being connected with that war as ANZAC Day, as those connected with ANZAC Day. I didn't have that. And there are a lot of kids who are our generation who didn't grow up with that because we're kids of immigrant parents. Whereas And even up until I was on council, to me, and I think the first time I went to an ANZAC Day dawn service was actually the 100th anniversary in 2015, the year before I was elected.
Yeah.
That's actually the first one I ever went to. And I was amazed. It was in Eltham, and I was just amazed at how many people there were. And that was 2015. So 10 years later, there are a lot more now than there were even 10 years ago. There's just a significant acknowledgement and respect for those who fought in that war and were around at that time. And unfortunately, there are I think there might be one left. There's none left.
There's none left in Australia from World War.
None left in Australia. Yeah, there you go. That's where we're right now.
And very few from World War II. But I think, so you raise a really interesting point about the connection as an immigrant family, that it wasn't really there, whereas I think you would probably agree with me, it's a lot more inclusive now again, because as immigrants have come in over the last 20, 30 years, some of them have served. And so there's been that connection. So their families have had that connection as well. Then I think that's created a greater awareness and a greater investment emotionally into ANZAC Day from a wider populace.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key thing. It's the emotional investment. And so the other thing too, I was in a meeting recently with the Monty Eltham RSL leadership team, and I asked the question. I was actually asking, well, we know so much about World War I and World War II, and we actually do know Vietnam War. Okay. And we don't necessarily know about the Vietnam War through the school education or through conversations with relatives. We may know, but we don't know as much, because it was kind of a war of shame, if that's the right expression. Unfortunately, our vets were treated so badly. So for Australia, our last war that we were really involved in was Vietnam, and that ended in 1975.
Well, and then Afghanistan and Iraq. Yes.
Okay. So then my question at the time in this meeting was, we were so involved in Vietnam, and that's my last recollection of, or my recollection of the last war we were really, really involved in. And so tell me, I mean, I know we've had other things since then. So I said, so what's happened since then? And so the leadership team, mentioned Afghanistan, and there's Korea, and there are all sorts of different parts of the world we've been involved in. But we've not been involved in the same way as we were in Vietnam or World War I or World War II. Not to the level.
It's interesting you say that.
Carl, you're rolling your eyes. Okay, just a heads up, you're rolling your eyes.
No, that's me thinking. Obviously, we had a massive presence in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Okay.
In fact, Australia increased the amount of battalions and regiments of infantry and other corps. Probably the biggest raise that we've had since sort of like Korea. And even when we went to Vietnam, it was still with existing regiments. We actually didn't raise new regiments. So a lot of people, I think, probably don't fully understand the levels to which we get involved in certain things. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't know the level of support that we provide to UN peacekeeping missions and how many people go to that. Now, you mentioned Vietnam. That was an interesting one, because Vietnam was the first live televised war.
Yes.
And when you talked about shame, and as I said, it was live televised, people saw what was happening. Wars are ugly. They're not good. And it brings out the bad as well as the good. And when people see those things happening, it would be like in the streets, they see somebody holding carjacking or whatever, it's a shocking event to witness. And with that shock can come a judgment. That judgment can be shame, pride, many different things.
Yeah.
Again, one of the things that came out of it was, did we truly understand what was going on? Same with many of the things that we've been involved in since. I think if you went back and asked a lot of the people who served in Iran and Iraq, Afghanistan and Iraq, they would question sometimes why they were there and did they actually achieve anything by being there.
Yeah.
And, you could probably say that for about a lot of different conflicts or missions. Sometimes the more the world turns, the more it stays the same.
Yeah. And the other thing too is those wars, certainly since Vietnam even, yes, they're televised and they're over there. They're not on our land. They're not, we aren't seeing really, it's a television show. Yeah. So can't smell it, you can't touch it, you can't.
You're detached from it.
Very detached. You can't feel. The feel isn't there. Whereas on your own land, you can look at the sky and you'll see something that's not meant to be there. You could look at the colours. The colour of the air would be different. The smell of the air would be different. Because we don't get that through the television, it's over there and we're just so removed from it, and it's another news story. And that's where, for someone like myself, who's never, my grandpa, my mother's dad was, he served in the British Army. And that was it. I haven't grown up, like you've grown up with that experience of serving, and I haven't. And so being one of those residents or citizens who I'm removed. I am removed. And for me, I turn on the telly and I only get a fraction of the experience because it's a television show and I'm not in it and I'm not impacted by it. I don't know anybody there, but I see around me. And what's been beautiful being on council and contributing to this day and participating in these days and these events, get to see how people are touched.
Yeah.
And hear. Yeah. I remember going to, when I was mayor in 2020, going to the Ivanhoe Cenotaph for ANZAC Day celebration acknowledgement. And I remember we were standing at the cenotaph. So unfortunately, the building caught fire and has burned. We still held a ceremony in this particular year. And I remember being at the event and across the park, so on the other side, just on the other side of the cenotaph was, I say a young man, he would have been late 20s. He looked like he had served in Afghanistan, and he was crying.
Yep.
So that's one example. I just get to see it. And we all get to see it around and then share stories. Australia doesn't really get involved on land. We don't. Our defence mechanisms are high, so we're in a different war now. We've got the COVID disease. It's a different war.
I think being an island nation has, insulated us in some ways, and probably also made us a little bit blasé about some things. Hopefully that will never change. I'd rather us be a little blasé than realise that we were being blasé through something bad happening. Yeah. But look, it's interesting. You've talked about activities, and the one at Ivanhoe, and one thing in Banyule, we seem to have had a really good support and attendance at services and marches within the Banyule area.
Yeah.
And when I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, to realise that we've actually got 4 operating RSLs. There was obviously Ivanhoe as well, and the Watsonia Army Barracks in the Banyule area. Do you think that's actually, because we've got that sort of representation, that's contributed to people attending, getting invested, being involved, because there's more places where they can actually go and find out about service, etc.?
Yeah, correct. So we do have more places. It's not just an RSL that you can attend, and also it's not just on ANZAC Day. So there are a few days around ANZAC or before ANZAC Day that you're able to attend a ceremony or an acknowledgement around Banyule. So which is great. We really, and this is what I mean by we really hold this day in such high regard. How do we get everybody to contribute to the day? How do we get people involved so that we don't forget? And the knowledge and the history continues to be passed on through the next generations. For this, it is an important part of our history. Another day that I've come to really understand through being on council is Vietnam Vets Day, which is the 18th of August. And that's a day maybe we should also, maybe that's another day in the calendar that we make important, really place significance on, without forgetting ANZAC Day.
Well, and I think that's a very interesting point too, because you've also got Remembrance Day. So there are a number of days out there. I don't think it's a bad thing to acknowledge on those days. We have many other days of acknowledgement in our country for a whole host of different things. So I don't think that would detract potentially from ANZAC Day. May even raise a little bit more awareness and acceptance of things that have happened in the past.
Yeah. It's interesting you make the point about Remembrance Day. We don't revere that as much. Maybe there was a lot of, I think other parts of the world, parts of Europe, certainly in the UK, they've got their days. Victory in Europe Day, VE Day, is highly regarded, and that was the end of the war. That was the end of the war. Remembrance Day hasn't been taken up as much as ANZAC Day.
It was initially, but for many people, again, they use the saying, the birth of the nation on the beaches of Gallipoli. When we first stood up, marched under our own banners, had our own leaders. Yes, the British were in overall command in some cases, but, we weren't part of the British Army. We were the Australian Army, and we were part of the ANZAC Corps with the New Zealanders. Yeah. So I think many people see that. So, for example, this year is the 100th anniversary of the Australian Signal Corps. So it was 1925 when that one first started. Even though there were signallers in World War I, they were attached to different corps. They weren't a corps of their own. So our Australian Army, that's when it was first truly put together as the Australian Army. Remembrance Day, initially it was celebrated, not celebrated, but remembered with a lot more reverence back in the the early 20s and 30s of the last century, because it was still very relevant in people's minds. Because we don't have a national day. If you go to an RSL at 11 a.m. every day, they have a moment's silence. Yeah. But if you're not going to an RSL, if you don't go to one of our many shrines of remembrance on November the 11th at 11 a.m., you would not know about it. And so I think, again, whilst ANZAC Day has been an education, Remembrance Day not so much. And now it could be too that some people, because we're talking about something that happened 107 years ago, And again, people don't really have that personal connection back to that as vividly as they do other events.
Although I will say this, for Remembrance Day, to be able to stop for 1 minute, you can be anywhere.
Yes.
And I do notice that the radios acknowledge it as well, which is a place you should never have silence. Silence on a radio is death. So that is, for the radio stations to take it up, that guides us as well if we've got a radio nearby. So you can have your minute silence anywhere.
So an interesting sort of tack I'd like to have a bit of a chat about is over recent years, there's been a lot of chat about, are we trying to commercialise ANZAC Day like we have done with Easter, Halloween, Christmas, and other significant events? And, obviously our sporting codes have tried to raise awareness with younger generations having matches on ANZAC Day. But a number of years ago, Woolworths got into quite a bit of trouble running a campaign that their intentions might have been good, but it was seen that they were trying to cash in on ANZAC Day. RSLs, they have now added poker machines. They've become more entertainment areas than necessarily a straight-out community support area. Do you feel that we do run the risk of over-commercialising and that we're sort of, especially with RSLs, detracting from their original reason for existing?
The original reason for existing is slowly passing, because the original reason for existing was created off the back of, widows and returned servicemen from World War One.
Yes,
so we've just
but it is supposed to still continue to look after widows and children of veterans of any war.
Correct. That's okay. Correct. Yeah, I understand that. And we've just acknowledged that we go away for war. We're not here on the land. For whatever reason, we're not here on the land. So that is, so because it's not close to us, we don't see it.
Yeah.
We're not experiencing it. So it's another organisation that looks after widows and children of service people.
Yeah, the reason I sort of raised that was I remember during the earlier years of the Afghan conflict, an Australian soldier lost his life over there, and his widow had given birth to a child, their first child, whilst he was away, and she was being forced to move out of their married quarter. Nowhere to live, no funding or anything like that from his, no pension or anything like that. And the only help she got was from current affairs shows, who finally helped shame the government into actually doing anything. The RSL at that time, or in New South Wales, I think it's called the AA, has a different name in New South Wales. It's not known as RSL. They actually didn't do a lot to help that lady out. And I'm wondering, have they actually forgotten?
Why? I don't know enough about that. I can't answer that question because I don't know enough about what happens hands-on in an RSL. I'm not in there. Coming back to your commercialisation, okay, I can ask the question, what does a football match have to do with serving in the war?
I'm really glad you raised that. Yes, I have served. Many of my colleagues and I we go to dawn services and we march. And last year we were at a pub after the march, and our people were we had our own area we were talking in, and we were talking as some of the guys were talking as the last post was playing. And somebody else turned around and said, show respect, shut up. And some of my friends and colleagues took exception to that. It was like, hang on, this is a football match. It's not even a proper service or memorial service. Wasn't even following the traditions. Where were you at 6 o'clock this morning? So it's very interesting how the football matches may raise awareness, but they shouldn't be seen as a substitute for the proper service, the proper memorials, traditions, etc. And that might sound like an antiquated answer, but that's how many of my colleagues feel.
Okay, yeah, because you've been there. You were very close.
It's more that, hang on, if this truly means something to you, go to the services and the marches in the morning. Sure, happy to see the stuff on the ANZAC Day Games, but that's more for show than it is for remembrance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now the thing is, too, what is ANZAC Day for people? That's another question to ask. What's ANZAC Day for you? You can go around the streets and ask that question, and I guarantee you there will be residents who say, "Oh, it's day off.
Yeah,
I get another day off."
Yep.
Or I get to go to the footy. That's seriously their ANZAC Day. And then there are others who go to the services, however many, they might go to all of them. Or they go to the one service that's the significant one for them, whatever they do. And it's, maybe the rest of the day is a quiet day at home. It might be a barbecue with family. It might be running around with the kids, whatever. It's a whatever. Some people work on that day. For whatever, because that's their industry. Some people work on that day. So it's... Anyway, I still don't know the answer to that question. What does football have to do with?
Well, and look,
I just don't know.
For many service people, they don't mind if people see it as a day off or whatever. It's what we see it as something. We like to think that many others Australians would share that, and there are quite a lot who do. If you want to see it as a day off to go to the beach or the football or something like that, that is absolutely your right. Many service people don't mind that. It's more being told that the service at a football game is equivalent to and takes precedence over other services and remembrances.
My understanding is that the reason you can play football on this day is because the freedom was allowed for it. That's my understanding. There you go.
It's quite a good understanding to have.
Argue that. So, there are those who say the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I was the start of World War II.
Absolutely.
And you look at all the different changes and legislation and borders and, styles of government since World War I to World War II, and then things that have changed since World War II that were a result of World War I, the Berlin Wall coming down. Berlin Wall went up, Berlin Wall came down.
One of these days I should have a chat with you because there's a linkage from the Treaty of Versailles and the end of World War II that had both of them had a direct impact for the Vietnam War.
Oh, they probably did. I've got no doubt.
But we can have a chat about that one day.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And then, of course, we had the Chinese War after World War II. That was all through the 50s. There's a connect. They would have been connected. Chinese War occurred because of World War II.
Which Chinese War are you talking about?
There was a Chinese-Japanese War after World War II.
No, that was before World War II. But anyway, we could talk about trade. Yeah.
They were connected. There was a connection. They didn't happen without the other.
Correct. We really should be looking at, because we are running out of time, there are so many activities we've got on ANZAC Day.
We do. We have lots and lots.
Yep. Should we go through them?
We can go through them. All right. So I'm going to be really biased and start with Sherborne Wood. So the Monty
that's the one that I would expect you to know more about, to be honest.
So the Monty Eltham RSL has two services, all right. The dawn service at 6 a.m. at the Eltham Cenotaph at 905 Main Road in Eltham.
And you can see a picture here of the cenotaph.
So here's the hint. If you want to drive, you can drive. You're not going to be driving anywhere near Main Road. Just a heads up. Yep. You need to make time. If you're going to park away from the main road, and you're going to walk. So you're going to need at least 10 minutes on top to walk.
Right.
You cannot get through. The streets are blocked off, and it's beautiful. There are just people everywhere. It is wonderful. ANZAC Day March in Weir Street. So then we come to Montmorency. So this is the Monty Eltham RSL Monty service.
Yep.
The march starts 10 a.m. in Weir Street. So everybody gets together in Weir Street, which is blocked off. A lot of people are at the Pocket Park, the lovely new Pocket Park. We see all sorts of groups, so you'll see a lot of scout groups there as well. School kids are there too, lots of different families. So we meet at 10 a.m.
Same thing apply there about no parking in Weir Street. It'll be blocked off.
Oh, yeah, you definitely can't get a park in Weir Street. Don't even try. Again, allow 10 minutes to walk. Yeah. Then we start the march in Weir Street, and we walk around the block, and we walk to the Monty Eltham RSL at 16 Mountain View Road. And this beautiful service again is held there. And again, it's just people everywhere. And it's lovely because I have the privilege of sitting at the back of the where the ceremony is held, and I get to look over the park, over Petrie Park and the Oval. I get to look at the train line, and it's wonderful because I get to see a whole heap of people just standing, watching and listening, and there are kids on the Oval kicking the footy and the trains go past, and that just encompasses the Montmorency service. It's beautiful. Watsonia also is very, very big. The Watsonia and Greensborough, both the RSLs are big. So Watsonia RSL, again, the dawn service, 6 a.m. at the Cenotaph. So that's actually at 6 Morwell Avenue. Again, don't even try and park near it. Find a park a few blocks away. Don't park in anybody's driveway, please. There is a gunfire breakfast at the RSL at 6:30 a.m., $5 a head. Bargain. That's good. The march is from 9:30 a.m. And at the corner of High Street and Morwell Avenue, everybody meets, and then you walk to the service at 10 a.m., the memorial service at 10 a.m. And then there are festivities from 12 till 3, again at the RSL in Morwell Avenue. So I've actually, I did go and visit one ANZAC Day. I did pop around to see Councillor Mark was there. Mm-hmm. So this is last term. And there are actually, there are a lot of residents there that I recognised who choose the Watsonia RSL to go to. So that's a great RSL.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yep. Really and they've got a courtesy bus too to help people get to and from the activities.
Yeah, they do. So make sure you contact the RSL if you need the bus service. So that's available from 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. So it runs up. There you go. Someone's working all day. Look at that. So if you need pickup for the Watsonia event, 943 54233 is the number that you call.
Okay.
The Greensborough one as well. So the Greensborough service, again, your dawn service, it's at 203 Henry Street, Greensborough. Barbecue breakfast at the RSL from 6:30 a.m. at 111 Main Street in Greensborough. The ANZAC Day March, Greensborough, is 8:30 a.m. and you actually meet at the Greensborough RSL and you march up to the War Memorial Park. So, again, you're not parking on Main Street. Don't even try. No. And the service is at 9:15. So if you don't want to do the walk, you don't have to. Just show up at the War Memorial Park for 9:15 a.m. service.
Yep.
And again, Greensborough RSL has festivities from 12 midday. Heidelberg, another big one, dawn service at 7 a.m. at the War Memorial, which is on the corner of Burgundy Street and Studley Road in Heidelberg. After that service march, head down to the Heidelberg Football Club and refreshments are available. There's a new oval there. We've resurfaced that oval. It's a nice oval down there. The ANZAC Day Memorial service is at 11 a.m. at 180 Bell Street, Heidelberg Heights. The ANZAC Day festivities, 12 noon to 3 p.m. at the Heidelberg RSL, which is also 180 Bell Street, Heidelberg Heights. So that's another long day there. So Greensborough and Heidelberg and Rotsonia have long days.
And so what I take it you'll be at the Montmorency Eltham
Absolutely.
festivity?
Yeah, I'll be at the dawn service in Eltham. I'll be there, and I'll also be at the march and the Monty Eltham RSL service in Petrie Park. That's my morning. Yeah, so I'm up at about 4:30. So there's no sleeping in on that day for me.
A long day.
Do you know what? It's the morning. It's actually the morning. Yep. So for me, I go to those events, and in between the dawn service and the family service, I usually meet my boys and the girlfriends and their dad, Michael. We usually meet somewhere in Weir Street and we have breakfast or coffee or something like that, and we just hang around. I hang around anyway. I hang around. And there are always people there to talk with. It's a very social event. And you know that all our RSL dignitaries are there. We march around the block, and that's followed with some primary school kids and the scouts and various organisations and service members. We march in acknowledgement, and then there is at the RSL. At the Monty Eltham RSL, after the ceremonies, there you can go to the bar. You can go to the bar, and there is sort of lunch, breakfast served. Yep. Yeah, so you can do that upstairs if you want to. And I've sometimes hung around for that, and sometimes I've moved on. So it just varies. But for me, definitely, it's the whole morning is taken up with this very, very special acknowledgement. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah. Now, what are you up to, Carl? What are you going to be doing?
Well, normally it would be Greensborough and Watsonia, but this year I'm going over to Perth, marching with a number of colleagues who I was on the Cambodian peacekeeping mission with. So apparently we're marching in the centre of Perth and then going to the central Perth RSL.
Oh, that'll be lovely.
It will be catching up with some people I haven't seen in nearly 30 years.
I've been looking at the Perth weather. It's lovely and warm, and I hope it stays warm and sunny for you.
Well, the bonus with that is it's great drinking weather. Not that soldiers or ex-soldiers especially need a reason to drink.
No, but it's a very, very special day. It's such a special day. The camaraderie, the remembrance, the social, and the remembering why and how we get to play football on this day.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we wouldn't get to do that. Yeah. We wouldn't have the freedom. Yeah.
No. Well, look, Alison, thank you for your time today. I really hope that it's a great ANZAC Day celebration, remembrance for you and your family. For everybody who's watching this, I hope that you're all able to find a way to join in the ANZAC Day commemorations. If you check the text copy below, you'll see all the dates and times for all the activities that we've mentioned, as well as some links to some websites where you can find out more.
Yep.
Whatever you're doing, have a great time, and join us next month for another episode of the Champion Chat.
Thank you, Carl. Yep. Hope I see somebody on some of you on ANZAC Day. Enjoy.
Thank you, Alison.
Bye-bye.